Hello and welcome to this fourth episode of Oracle License Expert Panel. I'm Frederick, and with me I have these world-renowned consultants. Maybe everybody want to introduce themselves if we have some people who haven't seen any of our previous panels. Paul?
Hi there. I've been working with Oracle licensing for about 20 years now. I work for a company called Version 1, which is about 1,600 people these days. We've got e-business suite and JD Edwards practices, so that's a large sort of source of our reviews and the work we do. Personally, I'm of a technical sort of nature and background. I'm a DBA by trade, so I do get involved in quite technical things as well as commercial and contract type work.
All right, we go down on my screen. It's Chris.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Wong. I've been working in the Oracle space for about 10 years. I work for a company with a company called Metrics Data 360, and we help folks with Oracle problems, challenges, and insight. Just like Paul, I get involved on the technical side of things as well. I mean, I do the commercials and the negotiations, but I like to understand why certain things are happening, and that's just an itch that I personally love to scratch, especially around Oracle when they claim things, though.
All right, thank you. Shishigiri?
Yeah, so I've been working on and with Oracle since now about 21 years, 16 of which was within Oracle. And when I left Oracle, I was the vice president there for about 4 years. And since the last 5 years, I've been on the other side of the table, helping customers be more wary of Oracle.
Okay, and to just clarify, I think everybody here on this panel, you are right now working as services providers, helping clients with Oracle licensing challenges.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that brings me to the first bullet point we're going to talk about today. And as it's been a while since we last spoke, I'm a bit curious to see what everybody's been up to, what type of projects have you been working on, what did you learn? Maybe a few minutes we go around the table and everybody speaks. Let's start with Paul.
So I was trying to think about this earlier. Time frames and timescales have been so distorted by what's been happening over the last 18 months or so. So it was a good chance to sort of reflect on what's been happening, what I've been involved in. And as ever with this line of work, there's been so many things I've been working on. But I guess this main sort of work I've been involved in is some very large ULA declarations, both declaration of ULAs and preparing for people getting ready for declaration next year. So some very proactive customers already looking at next year. Additionally, there's been some quite a market increase in the number of people discussing considerations for moving to the cloud and what that means for their license estate as well. So definitely seen a marked increase in that. I'd say most of those were around the AWS and Azure rather than to Oracle cloud. But arguably, there is a bit more of the OCI type discussion coming in later weeks as well. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of applications reviews as well. So we've been doing quite a large number of applications reviews, both e-business suite and JD Edwards for people as well. So as ever, a bit of everything, a bit of commercial, a lot of technical, and a lot of applications work.
I have a question that you talked about ULAs. Do you see customers, if you would make a percentage, how many exit, how many renew their ULAs?
Percentage-wise, I'd say probably 80% of people exit, 20% of people remain in the ones I've seen in the last couple of years or so. There's been a few sort of surprise last-minute renewals we've been involved in where people were determined they were going to get out, and then last minute, for whatever reason, there's been a compelling deal on the table, or there's been something they've discovered that they weren't quite expecting, then they've renewed and entered into a longer term. arguably shorter terms than you might expect. So extensions of 1 year have been more commonplace than they previously were as well.
Well, I'm thinking we as services providers probably come across more who want exit, because if you're renewing, I think you're more likely to not seek external help. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree entirely with that. But obviously, I think we would all agree that even if you are thinking of renewing, then it still makes sense to have someone come in and make sure that that's the right thing to do. And actually, if there's any changes required to the paperwork or the product set involved, then it's worth getting that done at that particular point rather than either at the last minute for declaration or post declaration.
So how many ULAs have you been involved with when you've been working as a consultant? How many ULA projects?
You know what? That's something I should count. Honestly, I don't know. I think the very first one I was involved in was not long after they were first sort of launched. So I think the first one I was involved in was shortly after I joined Oracle ULA, who were then acquired by version 1, and that was probably 2010. But I've lost count of the number I've been involved in since then, and same with the wider team I work part of as well. There's a huge number we've been involved in.
Okay, well, for anyone who don't know, I mean, you only work with Oracle licensing, right?
Yeah.
How many projects do you personally sort of, let's say, project lead a year?
Again, not something I probably should measure that sort of thing a bit more accurately. But what I can say is probably on average, I've probably got 8 to 10 projects on the go at once as a consultant, and we have multiple consultants in the team. So some of those projects will be a few weeks of effort, and some will last for 18 months. So I actually find it quite hard to measure per year, because some of these projects are very, very long term, or indeed sort of more managed service or preparatory work for ULA declarations. I'll have answers for you next time. I'll measure the metrics for you.
What do you like the most? Because you defend clients in audits as well. Do you like ULAs or do you like audit defense? What's your favorite?
Audit defense, definitely. It's
Why?
more interesting. It's more interesting. It depends what stage they're at as well. But I think it gives a customer a chance to be empowered in a situation where they may feel less knowledgeable than they'd like. It gives them some reassurance of someone who's been through it many, many times, and it gives them some insight as to what to expect, what behaviors that they might see, the way they should behave. Petrified by audits, frankly, and to provide some reassurance to customers is a really rewarding thing to do, I think.
Okay. Well, just one final question before I move on. During Oracle's financial end of year, did you notice any changes at all in how Oracle was interacting with its customers?
Seems like a long time ago now. There were a few surprise last minute type of deals which kind of came in left field. And also, again, perhaps surprisingly, there were a few deals which we kind of thought would certainly happen. The usual sort of lever of having year end to push certain deals through, where actually that didn't happen, where we expected there to be a sort of last minute rush, and it seemed like Oracle took their foot off the accelerator and let those coast into June and July. So that was abnormal. I'm not sure if it was anything that represents anything material, but it was interesting to see which things became important to them and which ones didn't. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag this year compared to other years, arguably.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go to Chris. So what have you been working on for the past 6 months?
Sure. Well, I've had a baby in May, and I bought in a new house. So these are the things on my personal side that's keeping me busy. From a work perspective, I've done a number of Oracle projects since joining Metrics. I joined in February, so there's been a number of projects. But a lot of my projects have actually been internal facing, things around how we set up our operations and how we do our managed services and as I'm taking over some of the responsibilities there. With regards to Oracle, all audit defenses, which I love. I second Paul's determination on audit defense. I love being the client's proponent, being able to represent them or help them through the situation. I'm glad to report all of our audit items with Oracle have actually closed quite successfully with very minor, settlements. In some cases, $0, and which is, phenomenal. It means it basically wasted Oracle's audit time, and I'm all about that if they're going to target, these clients. So, yeah, that's what I've been working on. No ULAs. There has been some Java things percolating, FUD from the sales team telling people they need to do certain things, and then us, educating clients on what the reality of the situation is and what their rights and entitle them to. But that's basically what it's been for the last 6-7 months.
So when you're talking about audits, how do you do it? Do you get on the phone with Oracle, or do you like to be in the background? What do you think works the best for you?
I think it's a mixed bag. It depends on what stage and where they are in the audit. I prefer to be in the background, to be advising the clients, because I think it empowers them to have a stronger negotiation power or perspective at the end. I don't mind jumping on. As I think I've told you before, I've had the head of LMS in the US get up at one of my conference talks and yell at me. So we had a great time there. Yeah, I don't mind representing clients alongside them. I would prefer to stay in the shadows and advise them where Oracle's pushing their luck and telling, feeding misinformation or half truths. That's my preference.
Okay, and did you work on any project at the end of Oracle's financial year? And did you notice any differences how Oracle was interacting with your clients compared to before?
This year's been actually quite interesting. There wasn't any. We didn't experience any last-minute deals around end of year. None of the usual scare tactics that the deals are coming off the table as of whatever. Mind you, all of ours were going pretty well in terms of audits, so I don't think that they wanted to put on the accelerator. They probably wanted to decelerate to see if they could find more information. But yeah, it's bizarre. Like typically there's the well, settle now, we'll just call it a day and get it in by X date, we're happy. I didn't experience any of that. So maybe it's just a odd year. COVID, Oracle is being less less leveraging, or leveraging the end of year less. Not sure.
Well, before I move to Shishigiri, the reason I'm asking, because I also sort of felt that Oracle was less aggressive in, for example, ULA exits, pushing deals than normally. So, that might, I don't know where that's coming from, but it seems to be a little trend that Oracle has been less pushy at the end of their fiscal year than traditionally.
Well, there is those lawsuits with the firefighters, I guess unions, and that were predicated on audits, and one of the disclosures in that were around audit practices. So maybe that's come down from on high. I don't know, but there is some correlation to that. I suspect.
Okay, thank you, Shishigiri. I'm thinking, it just came to me. Could less pressure mean because there are less salespeople being compensated on licenses at Oracle?
So it could be because of the bifurcation of the on-premise and the cloud team. And so the on-premise team is a smaller team, and they might be meeting their numbers, and so they might, they might not be going after some of the deals that, could be slipping away, and spending time on deals that are happening, and which is a very standard Oracle. There's very standard Oracle behavior. Not today. I mean, always. I mean, you've been in Oracle. I've been in Oracle. I mean so we do understand that. But so yes, it could be that say the lesser number of salespeople are meeting numbers faster, and so they are not going after some of these. It could be. I mean, I don't know, to be honest, because what Chris said and what you said, even I would concur that. I mean, there has been a little bit of less pressure towards the end of the year, and more readiness to sort of allow certification of ULAs.
Yeah. So yeah, because always, at least when what I know Oracle is that how Oracle is changing its compensation usually, dictates how they're behaving, to its customers.
Always.
Yeah. So what going back to the original question, what have you been working on for the past 6 months?
So it's an interesting thing. Maybe India is a lag kind of a market, slightly further away from the US and especially the North America and UK, to be honest. Europe is some parts of Europe are very similar to India, but I'm talking about it from my experience of being in Oracle, right? So India lags a bit, and so the ULA exits have started happening here with more. It's a larger number of exits have started happening here in the last 12 to 18 months. It was not happening 24 months prior to today. It was not happening 3 years prior to today. At that time, we were doing more of renewals. And as you said, in renewals, we are not necessarily needed most of the time, except for certain very finicky customers, right? So ULA exits have started in a bigger way. So that is one. Second, which I'm finding a bit, I'm not happy about it. If you look at it from an Oracle perspective, there's a lot of audits of smaller customers. I'm talking about customers who might have, 4 or 5 servers which are non-compliant. Which, because of the fact that you have all the options in it and everything, the list price at non-compliance balloons up to say $3.5, $4 million or $5 million, and so they want to close it at say 200K or 300K or something of that kind. But the point is, those kind of customers, there is a lot more of Oracle starting to audit. That's something that was not happening. I used to see audits for large customers.
Yeah.
And this is something that is very interesting. Smaller customers, the number of audits have started increasing.
Yeah, I think, we have chatted everybody here a bit offline, and I think...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It must be a strategy from Oracle to target medium, small Oracle customers almost exclusively.
Frederick, the other thing I wanted to bring here is it's also possible that many of us are coming to know this more and more because as an industry or as a small niche industry, the Oracle license management consulting has also grown over the past 3, 4, 5 years, right? So there are many more of us out there in the market trying to help clients. I don't want to flatter you, but the kind of work that you do, where, there are so many more people who are coming around, right? People are coming to know that there is somebody who can help. So maybe because of that, we are getting to know more. Because when I used to be out back in Oracle, I used to approve a large number of audits. But but most of them used to get closed without a consultant being there. Today, I think they're also finding people like us. Oracle ULA being there for the past 20 years was something, one of the initial pioneers out there, right?
Yeah.
But the numbers have grown in the last 5 or 6 years, 4 or 5 years maybe.
Well, that sounds great to me because there's so many companies out there that doesn't have anybody, right? I think
Right.
we here or other firms, I think we're probably only working with 10-20% of the companies out there, and there's probably 80% that big chunk doesn't even know that people like us exist, or they think they can do it themselves, right? Shishagiri, have you noticed, other than that Oracle, have you also noticed that Oracle is behaving a little differently in the Q4 in India, or what's your experience?
So yes, Oracle, most of the places, as I said, has started becoming friendlier when it comes to ULA exits. There have been a couple of cases where they've been extremely adamant and back to their old boorish behavior. Right? I mean, they are not ready to waive off, say, the VMware piece. When I mean, there may be just one processor being used somewhere. I think I gave you this example some time ago. I mean, there may be just one core being used somewhere, and you're still asking for, 400, 500 odd licenses because it's somewhere on a vCenter, right? I mean, that kind of stuff still exists, but on the larger customers, they've started going softer.
Yeah, I think at least some of the ULA projects that we did, Oracle didn't even insist on running their scripts or doing an audit. They simply asked the customer, do you need help with counting or declaring how many licenses you need? And when our client said, no, we don't need any help, Oracle very easily, they just accepted that, while they used to be, no, you must run them, really. That was, okay, let's move on to the next topic to talk about. So let's see, there's no questions. I think that I can see there's a few comments here, but these are not really questions to anyone in the panel. So if you have any questions to Paul, Chris, or Shishagiri about audits, licensing strategies, ULAs, how to reduce Oracle support, Java, please, write them in chat and we will try to answer them. I think the next topic to talk about is this one. And I'm actually going to start with Paul again. And I'm going to ask Paul, for people who don't know what this is, can you just give a short background to people what Oracle Support Rewards is?
I'll try. So it was introduced mid-June, and basically applies to new purchases of Oracle Cloud, OCI purchases in particular, and in effect, it took effect at that point. And basically what they're doing is, if you spend $1 on cloud, they'll give you 25 cents, assuming you don't have a ULA, towards your support renewal. So you can take that off your support renewal. So that's quite an interesting proposition. It's a fundamental difference for Oracle here. They are actually allowing people to reduce their support. Obviously, they're getting something back for that. They're getting customers to buy, and critically, they're getting Oracle Cloud to be used. So this only applies to consumed Oracle Cloud credits. So it's no use just buying it and having it sat on the shelf. You actually have to consume services in order to get these credits back. So it's quite an interesting idea. Like I say, I think it does actually show a bit of flexibility from Oracle, which is refreshing. I think most people aren't going to necessarily avail of it unless they're willing to be using OCI, if that's something that's of interest. And some people clearly have a strategy to go to OCI. So, it makes sense for them. They're going to get something out of it. They're going to get some money off their support. I think there's quite a lot of back-end systems having to be sort of meshed together to enable this to happen, really, because what they're taking is usage from the cloud dashboard and from people's cloud management consoles, and monitoring what's actually being consumed there. And then obviously that's going to be credited against support. That will come in, I think it's November this year, when people will be able to start spending those credits and reducing their support bill. So it'll be interesting to see what mechanism that actually takes, how easy that process is, whether if you've got a central top co that's using your cloud environment and a subsidiary that's paying support, will they be able to sort of transfer between them? There's a lot of questions yet to be answered. What I'd also say is if you sit down and do the maths, although the theory exists that you can completely eradicate your support bill, the numbers involved are absolutely massive. So I think that Oracle gave one example of $1 million support renewal being written off, and I did the calculation. I think it was 17,500 OCPUs per month, which would require that to be consumed. So really, really big volumes to get things written off. The theory's there. It will make a little bit of an impact for people. It might help them a little bit, I think.
So do you think it's going to make a major difference and get much more companies moving to Oracle Cloud?
I don't think it's going to fundamentally swing people towards Oracle Cloud, if I'm honest with you. I think, like I say, for those who are already heading towards OCI for whatever reason, say they've got applications or Fusion type products with Oracle, I think it will sweeten the deal for them. It will make life a bit easier for them. But I don't think it's going to mean there's going to be a stampede of people heading to OCI or leaving AWS and heading over to OCI. I think it's going to be a tactical improvement for people who already had it on the radar.
Okay. Chris, what do you think of it? And have you heard any feedback from any of your clients on this?
I've heard no feedback from clients, but I echo what Paul said. I think the people that are going to take advantage of this were already using OCI or are moving to OCI. It's not going to be, going to drive net new customers for Oracle. I think it's Oracle trying to take a play out of Microsoft's book, actually, to do this, and they're not very innovative at it. I don't think it's going to work the way they intended to work. I think that they could probably sweeten the pot for OCI. It's actually, if you look at Gen 2, the technical underpinnings appear to be quite good. The problem is nobody's going to adopt it because of these other things around the periphery of Oracle. And if you look at the actual cloud compute costs on Oracle, they're actually quite competitive. So they're having to deal with the periphery reputational issue they have, and this is maybe one way that they're trying to address it with existing customer base. I do not think it's going to lead to new flow for them of net new customers. I think that they have to rethink their strategy, quite honestly, that's what their goal is. And they have invested in their Gen 2 cloud, right? So they have to write down that CapEx, and they have to deal with consumption, because I guarantee you it's being used at a fraction of what it could be. Because there is those CapEx costs that and I'm sure they're on their disclosures, their share disclosures that they have to deal with. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, there's at least 50% of Oracle customers, I think, have unused licenses and software on their contract, right? That, repricing, that they're locked into an agreement where they're paying maintenance for licenses they don't need. And I think for those customers, this offers nothing really. I think they much more would rather to have Oracle waiver their support policy and let them terminate the licenses they don't need. And I think, at least I spoke to a couple of clients, and I asked them about their feedback on this program. And it was sort of what both Paul and Chris have said so far. Yeah, it's good, but it's not going to make a determining or decision factor in us moving to Oracle Cloud.
Yeah, you have to also run the quantums, right? Like if you look at the Paul, you've already run them, but I think you said 1,700 or 17,000 OCPUs. Like, yeah, the numbers become astronomical, right? Like it's basically you're going to maybe get a couple % off if you start using Oracle, and then they're going to push you to expand that footprint. Maybe it'll work for some customers. I'm not bullish on it, to be honest.
No. Shishigiri, why do you think Oracle came out with this program?
Okay, so first of all, I think Paul, you gave the mechanics very well. So I think that is, and as both you and Chris said, it is. I think it's more a feel good factor. It's not. I don't see. I mean, unlike some. I mean, I have spent a lot of time within Oracle. I have. I mean, being on the senior management of Oracle. I mean, I understand how they think slightly differently, and I don't think Oracle even believes that this is going to be a game changer. I don't think so. I mean, they're not fools out there. They know their business. They know how to do it. They know they're facing AWS. They know they're facing Azure. They did away. I mean, the entire Gen 1 investment they put into the dustbin, into the garbage, and spent so much money on building Gen 2. And Gen 2, as Chris said, it's technically as good as AWS at the IaaS PaaS level. I mean, it still may not be very good on the kind of services that AWS and Azure are bringing to the table. I mean, especially AWS is bringing a huge number of services which Oracle has still not done. So I don't think Oracle also thought that this is something different. It's a useful. I mean, you've been in Oracle too. I mean, it's one more carrot to the customer. Now the thing is, I mean, as Chris said, it is the reputational challenge that Oracle has that people are not going to the cloud. That is number one. I mean, to OCI. Second, I think they have to still up their game. They're very far away from AWS on the kind of functionality that they can bring to the table. I mean, if they can bring that to the table, I think they will still do well. On the SaaS front, I think they are already up and doing quite well with SAP. I mean, compared to SAP and to the others. I mean, they're I think, still, if not front runners, they're right up there. On the IaaS and PaaS, I mean, there is so much. I mean, you look at the function. I mean, function as a service when AWS and Lambda there, and look at it in Oracle. It's still, there's no comparison. So they'll need to do that.
Yeah. So I think, yeah. Paul, do you want to say something? Or
There's two things I want to say, actually. One is going back to the first question you asked, actually, Frederick. We forgot that Sheshagiri, you've also published a book in the last 6 months. So that's a very important thing that we forgot to mention in that first section. So congratulations on that. And the second bit is going back to the cloud. What I would say to anyone thinking about this is, if you want to make savings when it comes to cloud, is size it right when you go into the cloud. You'll make way bigger savings if you do it sensibly and with intelligence, than rather than buying too many credits, having loads of stuff sat unused, or burning things for the sake of burning your credit. It makes no sense. You can make massive savings just by getting it right first time and doing the sort of before and after comparison properly. And I think that when people sit down and think about it properly, that will unfortunately overshadow any rewards you might get from this program.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next topic. Audit trends. So we spoke a little about this, and for us who talk about this all the time, there might not be that many new things happening. But let's start with Chris. Who do you see Oracle is auditing? What type of customers? And have do you anything new when it comes to Oracle audits that the viewers should know?
Sure. So I'm seeing small, medium enterprises being audited. The most shocking change or trend that I've seen is that the LMS team is actually discounting false positives. They're not even showing up on preliminary reports. And I've never seen it before, really. And like all of the ACO stuff, like the advanced compression options, typically would show up on your preliminary audit report. If folks don't know the flow of this, you do your audit, you get your letter, you disclose your data. They created a preliminary audit report, you debate it, you discuss it, and then you get a final report. And typically in the past, that preliminary report contains everything, or just about everything. And I've had a couple of quite decent experiences where the LMS team, US based, discounted all of the stuff that I will always rip apart, because I have a list of meta docs that says this is not a thing, do not count it. And so I'm quite happy about that. I think that maybe signals some changes in either their algorithm, the professionalism, transparency. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I am quite happy that that's the case, because I don't have to write up a little technical reason why this isn't a thing, reference a document, So that's, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned over the last 6 months on Oracle audits is maybe they're improving.
Well, my comment on that before we move on is Oracle, never give them credit that they're organized as a full company. Usually, it could be either as one person or two persons in that region that are good guys, right? That don't want to go very hard at customers because they're good auditors and they're bad ones, right? And they view the things differently. I would suggest that, they're removing false positives. I don't think it's a global thing. At least I haven't seen it, but my take is always never give Oracle credit for being organized globally. It never happens.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You're a pessimist, I suppose, on this. I'm an optimist. I'm hoping that it signals a change.
Yeah, well, it could be absolutely, and it would be a good thing for Oracle, right? But Shishigiri, what do you? I think you already said you see small customers.
Yeah, small companies. Yeah, small companies, and so Chris, he knows, or he's a realist, not a pessimist. Oracle is handled differently in different regions. I mean, leaders of those regions actually make the culture of that particular thing. I mean, overall, there is a culture, but it is again local. So this false positive thing, if it is happening in North America, I think I'm very happy. I mean, this is good. I mean, it's still not seen where we are. At the same time, I have a customer in North America too. I mean, they were specifically on ACO. I mean, that seems to be still the pet one right from 11G onwards. I mean, it's been going on. That plus RMAN is the standard thing that seems to be working everywhere on the false positives, right? So, but it's good there, but not yet. And you're right, small customers, medium customers, we're seeing more of audits.
Shishigiri, have you noticed that a lot of people have left Oracle LMS, and the people working there now are far more junior than they used to be?
I was just going to touch upon this. It's good you brought it up. There are two things that seem to have happened. One, there's been more centralization of the LMS in the Bay Area. So this is more that there are people, especially for the ULAs. I think they've decided to sort of centralize discussions and certifications out of a couple of teams in two or three. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 teams across the world. And I think one of the larger teams is sitting out of San Francisco now, right? So that is, I think, one thing that has happened there. Globally, a lot of people have left. They've left, interestingly. I mean, especially I know in India, Singapore, and in the Middle East, they have left to companies like, they've left to companies like yours or mine, or to the big 3 or 4, whatever you call them today. I mean, so they have started going there because I think service providers have started giving services, and they've taken these Oracle folk into their place with maybe a different kind of compensation or whatever it is. So that is one thing that's happened. The people who have come in are junior, and you're right. I mean, it used to be run at a global level, at a different level. It's not. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, as you said, my challenge with Oracle is, I believe that they are doing something. and it's more about a short period of 3 months or 6 months when they're not fully organized or fully staffed. Maybe the structure will emerge in the next 3-4 months. There's been too many people leaving just now, so that's the challenge there.
Paul, what do you see? Is it small customers being audited? Is it partner audits? What do you see?
Yeah, exactly the same as everyone else. Small, medium enterprises, small scale, people who've probably never been audited in recent memory. I suspect there's a desire for Oracle to uncover VMware in these customers because obviously they're ripe for moving to VMware. Smaller states they want to consolidate onto VM makes sense. So I suspect that there's some potential quick wins for Oracle there. We're also seeing in the UK, notably more JPE-led or instigated audits. So there seems to be more of those happening at the moment as well as arguably just more sort of probing, more questions coming from both SEER and sort of Oracle account managers asking questions which are clearly related to licensing and trying to start a conversation which will lead to obviously further conversations and maybe a check being written at the end of the day. So nothing formal, but certainly early stages of trying to turn over stones to find something that a customer can be then further have discussions about as well. So none of the big customers we've seen in previous years, although there are noises around some of those big customers. If I may just go back to something we were saying about the LMS consultants themselves, I do kind of feel sorry for them in a way. Like Seshagiri says, that there's they've not got a lot of time to get in before they're in and doing the work, and getting them trained, I think, so they understand what they're measuring and what they're actually putting in reports, I think is a challenge. And the vast majority of these people won't be knowledgeable about Oracle's products at the end of the day. They won't know the difference between an AWR report and Active Data Guard. It's not something that's going to mean something for them. So they're not going to be able to have a decent conversation with a customer to say, look, this has been triggered and we can see it's being used in this particular way for this particular period, and that's why it's in the report. It's been gone through a processor, it's been spat out the other end, and they're doing their best, I think, to make sense of that without necessarily understanding fully what that means. I think, sorry, just very quickly, the problem that comes on the back of that is when that then goes to a point where money is being asked for, or licenses or non-compliances are being asserted without having that dialogue with the customer, mutually, so they can understand what their position actually is.
So we have been trying to recruit people, and we've had 3 people from Oracle LMS applying for a job at redress compliance. So I'm not going to go into the details, but overall, the level of their expertise, their knowledge, is far below what you normally see in 2-3 years of experience at any Oracle licensing consultant at many of these resellers. It's a very, very low level of expertise, and they seem to be very narrow in what they know. For example, just one example, someone working in database analysis at Oracle, he could not do analysis. He could just count the hardware part because they've automated the whole database analysis script part. So, that's far below. He's at the level that I think he would struggle to get the job as an Oracle license consultant, even though he's worked at Oracle for a few years. I think we have the next question here is actually sort of connected to this, at least in my book. Oracle has starting to verify SAM tool vendors for Oracle middleware products. Let's start with Seshagiri. Can you tell us, what is the verification program about?
Yeah. So I mean, Oracle has verified earlier database tool providers. I mean, providers who, and now they've started doing the middleware thing. But it's important to understand that when they're saying that they have verified tools, so let me take a step back and maybe explain it. I mean, a SAM tool or an Oracle LMS tool is supposed to go check across the network on what Oracle installations are there, check what usages are there, bring it back, and then calculate understand the deployment and then calculate the actual number of licenses deployed. And if it has a contract management part on the other side, then actually give out a compliance position or an effective license position saying that on these licenses or you are either compliant or non-compliant. That's what a tool is supposed to be doing, and that's what tool developers and OEMs and publishers say that they do. Now, Oracle, interestingly, since about 4 or 5 years, was verifying some tools. And they have caught up speed. And in the last 6 months, I think they've started verifying many more tools. Now, the difference between understanding what a verification, but the word verification means, and what Oracle means by it are two different things. So Oracle basically is talking about accepting the collection of data on your installations from the tool or by the tool. So the analysis of it, Oracle does not accept, neither do they say it is certified. So basically what they say is that you run this tool and the data that it collects, you give it to us, that we are ready to do it without you running our LMS scripts. Now, the interesting thing is Oracle, for most of the tool developers, what they have done, and smartly, I mean, I'm very impressed with what they've done. What they've done is they have made their tools capable of running Oracle's LMS scripts. So instead of programmatically writing queries and writing things and doing it, what they've done is they have automated the capability to run Oracle's LMS scripts, bring back that to a central place, and provide it as data, verifiable data. So that's what they're doing. And now they have moved on to the middleware piece. So interestingly, middleware in one way is a bit easier than Oracle, database, because you don't need to get into the database. I mean, middleware, you could do it for understanding the processes at the operating system level. So to an extent, it is easier to collect the data. But even here, it is, at the end of the day, the only thing that they are approving is the collection of data. That's what it is. So I don't know how far it's going to go. Long answer to your question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just going to move to Paul here. So if we go what Shishigiri said here, is he basically saying that the verified by Oracle does not include testing the tool's capability to analyze the Oracle scripts or create a license position? Is that correct?
From my knowledge of it, yes. And I think you've also had conversations with people who've been involved in this process. But yeah, it's the ability to collect the data and the calculations. These tool vendors will kind of layer on top of that. But as we've said on this sort of discussion previously, there's so many caveats which need to apply to any such calculations. A processor is not always a processor. It depends on what your contract says, for example. And so any such tool that's sort of saying you need 10 processors needs to have a big caveat alongside it. Again, as we've said previously, people really should take the output of any such tool with a large pinch of salt and understand what that verification really, really means. And there's actually a different result that they need to get out of the tool, which they may need to engineer themselves. It makes collecting data easier, arguably. They don't have to go and run scripts manually. But the back end and what that actually means for license requirements is a whole different ballgame.
Well, I just think let's imagine redress compliance would be a SAM tool vendor, and we go to Oracle and say we want to be part of your verification program. Okay, we have our own tool that, our own software the customers are installing on their servers to manage the installation of software. Then we are receiving the scripts from Oracle, the audit scripts, and Oracle says you need to prove to us that your tool can run the script and hand over the data, and the data need to look like almost like when we are using our official audit script. So it's almost the same. And then you're verified. We don't test anything if the tool can actually be 1% right. We just want to make sure that the script data is correct. Okay. But if I would be that, and then I say, oh, we're verified by Oracle, Chris, I think you called it one time. Was it clickbait or something like this?
Bait and switch.
Yeah, bait and switch. Isn't it like? I just think it's for me. It's almost conning the customers, right?
Let me follow on with that. I think it's just like how Oracle defines installed and/or running. They've defined verifying tools differently than what the market accepts. Period. Full stop. Verified Oracle tools are primary data source tools. They collect the primary data required to perform analysis. It does not certify anything or verify anything to do with analysis. It does not verify anything to do with calculations. It does not verify anything past the point that they collect the right data set. And I think this is misleading in two factors. So one, customers of tool X get the notion that, oh, the tool is verified by Oracle and therefore we can trust what it says. So that's one element that I think becomes murky because it's not always true. In fact, it's rarely true. If you have a custom contract, it doesn't remove false positives, so that's an issue. And number two, it helps Oracle because now there's not this resistance to running Oracle scripts. Oh, your tool's already verified. You can just run it through them. And so it breaks down that barrier. So I think that Oracle's actually quite strategic in this front on why it occurred and why they're verifying. And I don't think it's to, necessarily help the customers. It's to break down barriers around sourcing primary data so that they can use that to do stuff. I think we've lost Frederick for a second. Oh, and
he's back. He's back.
Yeah, it's back. I was like, we should have just designated a backup now when Morten is not here. But for me, because the word verified, when you hear it, you associate it with something completely else than what it is. I think that's the problem. I think
it's the same with installed and running. Like when they define that, that's very different than they interpret it as. So yeah, I agree with you, Frederick.
I mean, just one thought before you continue. I mean, I as we were speaking, I just got this idea. One of the challenges that Oracle always faced is that customers would give OSW as a declaration, and that might not contain all the instances and all the servers. Now, with these verified tools, customers actually get to know their compliance position because it anyway goes and scans the network. So possibly, even without getting into an audit, customers who now know that they are non-compliant to such a large extent, not that they did not know earlier, but now they have this. So it's possible that they're going to pay up even before there is an audit. I mean, I don't know. It could be. I was just.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think this verified. Oracle is doing it to help themselves. They are hoping to make more money out of it. I think they are hoping that if more companies are verifying, having verified tools, they're going to be able to audit more customers instead of the customer having to run the scripts on 500 servers. But just take the archive data underneath your tool. It's a lot easier to audit customers.
Well, and I think that also probably introduces another issue: is if those tools are storing historicals, are they going to now go back through the historics? of the situation, and saw that when you were doing a migration, you increased your CPUs by, 20 cores. Is that acceptable? Oh no, and how do you remediate that? So I think it introduces some risk to the end user clients, and I think it is only an upside for Oracle and JPEs.
Let's go to the last topic. I've not been very good at timekeeping today. Let's start with Paul. Licensing trends, news. What do you think anyone watching now? Name one or two things that you think they should be aware of when it comes to Oracle licensing.
I think we're all kind of saying that we're seeing more activity from Oracle. As a group, we've all noticed that there's more jobs being advertised for Oracle license specialists within Oracle globally, across many territories. So it does represent perhaps a change in scope for them where they're looking, but there is going to be more audits. I'm pretty sure of that. I also speculatively, and we've said this a few times, but I think the time is going to come soon for Java audits to start kicking in. I think they're probably over the honeymoon period now, where people who've desperately needed it have bought it, and they're now into a position where they're probably going to have to start chasing people and forcing people's own, because they know the people have been downloading using Java in a way which requires a subscription. So those are my sort of predictions, I think.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I second the Java. I think it's coming at some point. I still don't think that Oracle has the capability to do it at this point, but it doesn't mean tomorrow they won't. The other interesting thing that I saw, and is more news, less licensing, but more news, is that Oracle's introduced this this migration path from AWS to OCI, and does a cost comparison of what a database on AWS versus OCI's MySQL would cost. And I think that is trending in the right direction. If you actually look under the covers, it's a little bit of funny math because it's weird workloads, but I think it means that they know they need to actually eat some of the AWS's market share on the database side, and not necessarily towards Oracle database to MySQL. So I predict that they will go bigger on the MySQL side at some point. It is quite a good technology. And since they acquired it, it's grown. So it'll follow that trend, perhaps, that we've been talking about.
Okay, Sheshagiri?
Just going along with Chris, I mean, licensing audits we've already discussed. I think going along with Chris, MySQL heatwave and a big push against Snowflake is what I think Oracle is going to look at. As we go along, the old Oracle Teradata fight, we will see that in the Oracle Snowflake, and let's see what happens. And they will do that with MySQL rather than with anything else.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
That's it. I mean, you should speak. I mean, it's nice that we are speaking, but you should speak. There's so much. I mean, I attended one of your courses, okay, and you should speak. You speak well.
Well, I haven't prepared anything for this event, so but I think it's really interesting to listen, because my own theories about what's happening, because we're all speculating and really having I don't even have a 1% view of the market, and neither of us, right? But if we put all of our 4 minds together, at least we can see some patterns. And I think it's pretty clear that Oracle is auditing more. As Paul said, they're hiring a lot more people. They're auditing smaller, medium customers using more audits. My own thinking is that feels like there's more audits in the US, Middle East, not so much in Western Europe. I might be wrong about that. And I think the Java, I could see somewhere that Java might be verified for this middleware part, right? So, and it's a quite easy product to audit. So I think the Java audits must be coming sooner or later as well. That's it. I don't think
So,
we have.
so the middle, just before you leave, I mean, the middleware thing is verified for Java too. I was not aware of that.
I was
I
reading.
think I need to take a look at that. I did not know that, because I thought we were one of the few people who do Java very well. But that's interesting. I mean, okay,
I'm not sure.
Well, I'll check it out. I'll check it out too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think if you read that article on Item Review, which someone had written, and they had some sort of insider information from Oracle, because it was obviously a plant, right? So someone told them that, and it said that they were looking at verifying Java for their tooling.
Interesting.
Yeah, believe it when I see it, I think, on that one.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Oracle doesn't even know the licensing rules themselves, right? So how are they going to do that?
But remember, it's not about the licensing rules. It's about sourcing primary data so that they can pull it back and make their own interpretations. And so verifying a tool for Java is quite easy. Just suck into Java and the publisher and the version, and now you're cooking with fire.
Indeed. Let's see what happens in the future. Want to say thank you for all of you for attending, and let's set up a date for the 5th episode.
Yep.
Cool.
Look
Thanks,
forward.
everyone.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you, and best
Bye-bye.
wishes to everyone. Yeah.